biggest killer of men under 45 is suicide.
Then it's either the decision of like living with the thoughts in your head, living with the problem, or working on the problem, and like making the life easier. Welcome to Soul Hacks and today's episode, and I'm really excited. Like, it's a really important topic for both of us, even though it doesn't affect me that much as it does you. And today's episode is about men's mental health. Yay! And I'm very glad to have Jacob here because he's back, guys. Because you have your mental health page, and it's been a big topic in your life as well. Yeah. And I think I couldn't have a better guest than Jacob for that topic.
The expert is here.
So we will probably dive into like deep and also heavy topics. So I will try to make chapters that you can skip some things. So there's a trigger warning here. Yeah.
There's also a tear warning. I will be crying at some point. The tissues are here. The tissue
box is right there. Shall we?
Let's get into it.
Yeah. Even that I'm not really affected on it, it's a really important topic for me as well, because I have a friend back home. We were really close, and then it shifted a bit, and we like continued with our lives, but we like always stayed in contact. And before I left for Australia, and like while I was in Australia, the contact got back together, and especially when I was back home last year in summer, we reconnected in such a great way. And not only I have grown, also he has grown. And I love our conversations because I love his perspective, and it's such a great perspective, like a man's perspective. It was really affecting my friend back home. He basically said to me, as a man, if you think about it, no one actually cares about you. Yeah. Because you're so alone. Because, for example, in the club, who gets approached? Yeah. Women get approached. Yeah. They're like, rarely men get approached. And he was like, you are in a mindset, in a doing and being of like always pleasing others, or like approaching others to get the attention or like the love you want. Yeah.
The biggest thing I think people need to understand about guys is like, we grow up thinking that our love or attention has to be earned, not given, which is a sad thing, because then guys go around like feeling like they're not worthy of love. I think that's the biggest thing, that guys will go around like they're not worthy of love, they're not worthy of attention, or these things that they should be. But it's true, it's like, and that makes them lonely, makes them like, I said, especially with that whole like responsibility thing, like guys will like grow up, like my dad at my age had like a wife already, like he had his life planned, whereas like a lot of people our age don't have that anymore. So not only do they not have the responsibility that they want of like a life, they also then don't have the love or the attention or of people around them without the feeling that they like have to earn it. So it makes it so lonely.
And like that hit me really hard when he said that, because I was like, people care about you. It's not that no one, like, I completely get his point. I completely got his point of view. But like, and it was like, I felt so powerless to like say anything that could make him feel better, because obviously I could say like, people care about you, you are worthy of love, and people love you.
But it's like, it's never expressed on a day-to-day. Well, I have it. I'm very lucky to have people that do express it to me. But like, a lot of guys don't have that. Like it, like day-to-day, as you said, like in any aspect of life, it's not. It's not given. And like, even like if somebody wanted to say it to a guy, they probably wouldn't know how to deal with it. They wouldn't know to be like, they just wouldn't take it in, because that's just how they're programmed.
Because I think like, what I also think about is like the way girls greet each other, or like they hype themselves up. I think there's so much love. Like there's a discussion of like if it's genuine or not. Like, there's such a different way of like how we act with each other. It gave me such important and meaningful insight, and I'm really grateful for that. And I know that he's not necessarily struggling at the moment. It comes and goes in waves. It has always been a big topic and a conversation when we met. So it is quite
close to your
important,
heart.
close to my heart, and an important topic for me as well. And I think that's your sign to like just hug your mate or like just message him.
Why do you think I'm the biggest hugger ever?
Yeah, like just like send your friend a message saying that you appreciate him, or like I think that should be
I'm like
more normal.
I'm all for sending people messages, especially when I'm drunk. I will drunk text all my mates, being like, "I love you guys."
Yeah,
you know?
That's your sign to like stop the podcast now and like message your mate you think of. And like say that you
even if you've not spoken to them a while.
Yeah, doesn't fucking matter. Just like send a message saying, I love you, I appreciate you.
You can even make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
But, like, it changes the dynamics.
Yeah,
definitely.
and like see how much impact it will have and what message you will get back.
Yeah.
Message your mate now.
Message him. Do it.
We will start with your mental health page.
Yeah.
And what I wrote down was like, when did you realize that it is a topic for you?
That's a really good question, because I was thinking about that on the way here. I think I was very aware of like other people's emotions, and especially emotions within guys. I went to an all boys school, so you can imagine being around a lot of guys who shut down all their emotions. Yeah. You're around it a lot. But in terms of like the page, I knew I wanted to do that from when I was at least like first or second year of university, so like 19, 20. But I always put it off because I myself was going through so much stuff at that time, and like I felt like an imposter if I was like promoting men's mental health when I myself was still like going through it all and not dealing with it in a great way. Actually, a really good question. I've not even really thought about like when it first started, because now I just think about it so like effortlessly that it doesn't like come into my head that like, oh, I need to think about it.
Yeah.
But I definitely think part of it happened when we were in school. We left high school, so we were like first year of university, 18, 19. One of our friends from school committed suicide, and like we'd already been talking about it at that time. We were friends. Like I wasn't close with him, but he was in our friendship group, and like I didn't realize that anything was wrong. Yeah. And just like to find out that he'd like done that, it was quite shocking. And like I remember all my friends who were at university with me, we all like got together and like talked about it. And then like from then it really prompted, especially my friendship group from home, to like be more open to talk about it. Like my friendship group from home are very like lads lads holidays, beers, all of that, you know. But that was honestly a big changing point. And then we went into COVID, obviously, and we decided we wanted to do like a charity event to raise money for Papyrus, which is like a men's mental health a charity back home, young people like suicide prevention. We did a 24-hour run where we each like took our turns, but alongside that we did interviews very much like this, where we talked to each other about our mental health. We'd been friends for like 10 years by that point, and we had conversations then that we'd never had with each other before. Like I found out so much about my friends that like I didn't know about their struggles and what they'd been through. So that was the point where I knew I was like, right, this is something I definitely want to do, because we posted it online and we got so many nice responses from people who were like men and women. It didn't matter, just that like just saying how refreshing it was and how nice it was to not feel alone in those thoughts. So that's probably when it started.
Is that also how you started running?
Sort of. I'd always been an active kid, and then obviously when I got older I still did that. But yeah, that was around the time that I got into running, when I knew that I wanted to start that page and was like aware that I wanted to share that. It was then. And like another reason why I started the page is because I went through so much growing up with my anxiety, like depression, feeling so like isolated, feeling like crazy. I honestly grew up, especially at university, thinking I was insane. Like the issues I was dealing with was just like my issues, that nobody else was going through those things, and I really didn't want other people to like feel like that, because it's like all the stuff that I went through, loads of other people went through. It's just, especially for guys, there was no topic of conversation to talk about it. So I really wanted to post stuff where guys could see another guy who'd gone through something similar. Because I honestly think the biggest thing with especially men's mental health is like being seen, or like being acknowledged, and like understanding that your problems aren't like, they're not just isolated to you. Because I feel like that's a big thing with guys in general. They they're their own biggest critic. So if there's something wrong with them, they think it's because they're wrong. Yeah. Not that it's just like something that a lot of people go through. Yeah. So that was why I wanted to start the page. Yeah. And it's also very therapeutic to look back and talk about your own experiences. Yeah. Like it's some of the times when I was writing it took me like, I'd have something that I'd wanted to do, and it'd take me like a month to actually go and post it, because I was like reliving a lot of the stuff that had happened. Yeah. But that was the whole point of doing it, because it's like, it's raw, it's your emotions, it's what you've been through.
Yeah. And I also feel like putting your emotions into words is hard enough. Yeah. And I think it's way harder for men. Yeah. Because like every problem matters. There's no problem that doesn't matter. Yeah. And showing emotions or like sharing emotions is not a weakness at all. I think that's still a bit in people's head.
I do, like, especially for my generation of men, like my dad's generation, they never shared their emotions. Yeah. Like, I honestly believe like my generation, maybe a bit older, they're the first sort of men who like, it's becoming commonplace to share those emotions. Yeah. But it's still, as you said, there's still like a stigma around it. There's still like, even I feel it sometimes, like when I'm around people like my friends, like there's something inside me that tells me like, don't say it. It's like they'll take the piss out of you, or like it's a sign of weakness. Yeah. And like that's just because it's ingrained to us as children. Like it's nobody's fault, and it's not like society's fault. It's just how you grew up. Yeah. Because of what our parents went through. And I was lucky to be in a childhood and environment where I was able to talk about my emotions and it was fine. But I know that a lot of guys find it so hard to share their emotions because they're told not to. Yeah. And sometimes it is easier to run away from your problems and face it, which I do think a lot of guys do. Yeah. I don't think it's the fact that they don't feel like they can share it. It's just if they share it, then it becomes a real problem that they have to deal with. Yeah. Which is then harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the biggest, I think the biggest first step in mental health problems is the realization that you've got a problem. Yeah. Like that's the hardest bit to get to. And then the next hardest bit is saying it to someone else. Yeah. Because thoughts can live in your head and like they're not real really. It's just in your own head. But as soon as you write it down, or as soon as you say it to someone, that's when it becomes something real. Like you have to deal with it.
You can have your thoughts in your head and like always run away from them or avoid them. Mm-hmm. And then it's either the decision of like living with the thoughts in your head, living with the problem. Yeah. Or working on the problem. Yeah. And like making the life easier, because I feel like so many people grew up having like those thoughts, but continue just like living their normal life, and like not that I became numb, but I don't know. What do you think?
You learn to live with it.
Yeah.
Like
do you think you get used to living with it?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, and that's why like when you get older, it hits you because you've lived with it for so long.
Exactly.
And then like something changes, something happens. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, I've lived with this for so long. Like,
why did I not?
Yeah, why did I not face it? And that's what I mean. Like, you can live your life like that. And once you've got to a point where that's how you've lived your life, you don't know anything different. Yeah. Especially when you're growing up to be an adult. Like, I remember the time that like I had like applied for therapy. I remember the time that they told me that I was going to start it in like 6 months.
Yeah, that's another thing.
I remember the first time that they like said that, I was hit with so much like, oh my God, like I'm actually getting help for it. Like there is something wrong with me that I need to get help with. Yeah. The first like month after being told that I was going to get help was maybe like one of the worst months of my life.
Really?
Because it was real, like all the stuff that I'd lived with all my life. Yeah. I was like, it was almost trying to fight back against me trying to get help. Yeah. That's the way it felt. It felt like my brain knew it was gonna like have to face all these problems, and it was like it didn't want to. It was I had like panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I was like couldn't sit still. It was really interesting to have that, because I remember in my first therapy session I explained like when I was told I was getting help that the first month after that was the hardest month. Mm-hmm. She was like, it's quite normal, because especially in guys, she said like they bottle it up, they keep it to themselves, and then once it's real, once you're actually getting help for it, it all comes out. All the emotions that you push down start coming out.
Yeah, because like that's what I thought. Like you can have so many problems, but no problem doesn't go away. So like even if you try to avoid it, it will pop up at some point.
Yeah.
And I think either you decide to live with the problem and with like the heaviness that comes with it, or you try to face it, experience life more intense and lighter.
Yeah.
That's another thing with like therapy. It is already such a big step to like approach like a place that offers therapy.
Yeah.
But then like the waiting time comes with it. That's I think another hard thing to like accept it, that it will take a while and that you don't change your mind.
I worked in mental health, so I worked for the NHS like Minds Matter team, working in admin, so like telling people how long the wait time was, or like dealing with that. And that is the hardest part, because we would have so many people who would need the help. 6 months is such a long time that you could feel better after those 6 months and decide not to go into therapy when the problems are still there. Because mental health is so up and down. It's such a roller coaster that when you reach out for help, it's not even just like, oh, I like need this help. It's like your body being like, I want this help. So then being told you have to wait 6 months, and then by the time it comes round again, you've probably psyched yourself out of feeling like you're not worthy of that help. You know, you're like, oh, there'll be somebody else who needs it more, like I can live my life. The biggest killer of men under 45 is suicide. It's the crazy stat. It is hard to like approach it, how to deal with it, but making therapy more accessible.
Another thought of many people is like, oh, some other people need it more like necessarily than I do. Forget that thought. Honestly, forget that thought, because there's so many people, they need help but they're not willing to get help. So every single one that acknowledge needing help is worth the help.
I like
that's not it.
I had the exact same thought when I started therapy. I felt so guilty, because I was like, oh, there's people out there who need this more than me. And like it is very typical to think that when you're in therapy, because like people are empathetic, like you're going to think that people deserve it more. But that's like not the reason why you should get help. You shouldn't get help because you're the worst. You should get help because you need help.
And especially when it comes and goes in waves. Some people are willing to start therapy and then they apply and then it gets better, as you said, and they're like, oh, I don't need it anymore. But that's like, I think that's exactly the point where you should start therapy, because you're already in a good state. Like just because you're better now doesn't mean that you will be better from this point onwards. Start anyways, even if you feel better.
And like I think that's one of the biggest things in mental health that I don't think people sort of understand, or they might do, is that your problems aren't just gonna disappear. Like my anxiety is not gonna disappear.
What is fucking going on?
At least the beeping stopped now. Oh my god.
That should be fine. I have like, maybe that's another thing. Maybe I can learn how to like
muffle the
background.
I think like the biggest thing that people have to realize in mental health is that problems aren't going to go away. That therapy isn't there to get rid of your problems. Like I went into therapy knowing that my anxiety wasn't going to just disappear. I went into it like wanting to have better tools to manage it, and that is all you can do with your mental health, because everybody experiences those emotions, like anxiety, depression, loneliness. Like everybody experiences them. I experience it more severely than other people, and so I just need tools that can help me not feel it as severely. And like at the start, it's a whole journey. Like at the start, it could take for fuck's sake. Your problems don't disappear. That therapy isn't gonna, it's not like any other sort of help where like you go in, you get fixed, you come out and it's fine.
It's an ongoing process.
It's an ongoing process. If I had a bad episode, I'd feel bad for like a week. I'd feel down, like emotionally numb. Whereas now I could probably fix myself in an hour. It's the hardest thing and also the easiest thing to like notice, because like it's hardest because you realise that you're going to have those thoughts forever. That they're not going to go away, so that you are going to be in a constant managing it. But as soon as the easiest bit is like when you take ownership of that, when you take ownership, like I believe my anxiety is an extension of me. Like it's part of me. Like I show it love, like it as it's part of me. And then when you do that, you realise that it's a lot easier to manage, because whenever I get anxious now or I have panic attacks, like I feel like I'm not angry at it, I'm not upset at it. I'm like, that's just me. So like I have compassion for it. I think that's a really helpful thing to do.
In terms of therapy, I think that will help a few people as well. Don't see it as being weak. See it as going to someone to not necessarily get help, more getting support on how to deal with things.
Yeah.
And to make it easier. Because my therapy, for example, was not, she didn't really help me. She just like asked the right question that I developed for myself.
Yeah.
So there was just like the right amount of support and influence from outside to like direct me in the right direction.
Yeah.
So, and I think it really depends on the therapy, and it really depends on like the problem.
But like in general, what most people go to therapy for is the same issues.
Yeah.
Like anxiety, depression, all those things. So like in general, you're right. A therapist isn't going to say something that fixes you.
Yeah.
You do the fixing yourself.
Yeah.
They just guide you to where you need to be fixed.
Exactly.
And as you said, like there is, especially in guys, such a big stigma around going to get therapy.
Yeah.
Because it's seen as weak. And I also think it's not even weak. I honestly think guys find it really daunting, the prospect of sitting across the room from someone and having to just express their feelings about how they are. I honestly don't think the biggest thing stopping guys is that other guys are going to take the mick out of them, or that they shouldn't go and talk about their emotions. It's the fact that it's scary to go and sit down across from someone and just tell them all the things that make you feel bad. Yeah. And that's why, like, that's one of the main reasons I started my page, because I was like, look, therapy isn't scary.
Yeah.
Honestly, the hardest part is the first phone call I had saying, like, I need help. That was the scariest bit for me. Yeah. After that, everything else was like, obviously it's still scary, but when you're actually in therapy, it is, I wouldn't say it's scary, it's just daunting. And the other thing about therapy that I think people need to understand is that you can go into a session and come out of it feeling worse. But like the classic saying of like, sometimes you need to feel worse to get better.
Yeah, yeah.
I honestly think that's part of the process. And of course you're going to feel bad because you're talking about some stuff that you might never have talked about or might not have realised. Like I had a lot of realisations that made me feel sad about myself, because I didn't realise that's the way I viewed the world, was because of those things.
Sometimes when you, as you mentioned, you come out feeling worse, I think that happens at a state where you already know what you can do to feel a bit better. You initially already do something to like feel better. For example, you go out of a therapy session, you're like, okay, I feel like fucking shit. Yeah. I will treat myself with like my favorite food. And then you connect already like the feeling bad with like something good. Yeah. So like not something good, but like to like feel better. So I think that's another thing. Yeah, the
thing about like the thing I always say with therapy, and like, is that if there was something physically wrong with you, you would go and get help for it. Yeah. If you had like a broken arm, whatever, you'd go to the doctor. I feel like people have to view their mind in the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that, if you've got something that's causing you problems, you should go and get it looked at. Yeah. And like the reason I use that analogy is because it takes away the whole stigma of like, oh, am I in pain? Do I need to go and see a doctor? All those things. Yeah. That's also another reason why, like, I think the percentage is like guys are 30% less likely to go and speak to a doctor about their mental health than women are. So it's another, like, it's just, there's so many reasons behind why guys find it hard to access mental health. Yeah. And a lot of it is about communicating and reaching out. Yeah. I do think that is changing. Like, I hope that is changing. Like, I know so many of my friends who are more open to talking about it. Yeah. But it is still, like, quite a big thing for guys that, like, therapy is such a word that they associate with women. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They don't associate it with guys.
Yeah. With a neutral person.
Yeah. I see. It should be a neutral saying, but, like, I know guys will think of it. And also guys tend to, when they feel like they need to deal with their problems, a lot of guys turn to alcohol or drugs. Yeah. That's like their first port of call. Yeah. To like numb those feelings. Yeah.
And also when you sit in therapy, not knowing how to express or what to express, it helps by just saying this. Yeah. And then that's already a thing the therapist can work on, or like say the right things, and then you open up by yourself without actually like realizing.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you don't know how to open up, you can just like say
that I don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah, and like the person will guide you through.
Yeah, and also with that, I think guys just don't think that therapy will help them. They don't understand how it could help them. They don't understand how talking can help their mental problems, because guys are very, if they see a problem, if they can do something to fix it, they can see a physical thing. They need to replace a tire. To them, their mind is like, I can replace that tire. Whereas like they don't see therapy as a way of like helping talking. Like they don't understand how talking could help. I think that's one of the other things. Like I think women do it so naturally that they understand that talking helps, whereas guys don't think talking helps. Even like talking to yourself, like writing in a diary, that is so much more helpful than like I didn't believe it. I remember my ex-girlfriend telling me to journal for years, and I was like, that's not going to help me. Like, and then I started like 2 years ago, and it helped me so much more than I thought it would. So like I'm not trying to sit here like I'm not done that before, where I've said like, oh, talking won't help, because like I've been there. But it does help.
Do you feel the need or the pressure to be strong?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this on the way here. Why do guys feel that need to be strong? I personally, it obviously depends on your definition of strong.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what, like, I think that's a big problem for guys my age at the moment, how they define what strong is. I think guys have a need for responsibility. Like if I think about my dad, when he was my age, he was already married. He already had a life that he needed to be responsible for. For example, a lot of people my age now aren't married, don't have kids, don't have a house. So that responsibility, they can't put it anywhere. So they feel lost. So then they have to create their own definition of being strong or being responsible. Which is why you get people like fucking Andrew Tate, a guy who puts across what his view of a strong man is. And because so many guys don't know what to think, it's so much easier to follow that bravado than actually realizing that you have to create your own, you have to grow up and you have to figure out for yourself. Like, my definition of what I believe is strong is completely different to what somebody else is. I'm a very emotional person, and sometimes I feel the need to not be emotional because I'm a man. And especially like when I think about how I am around like women, I feel that they would see it as a weakness that I'm so like over emotional about my feelings. I don't believe that, I just know I have that feeling sometimes. It's hard not to think those things. Like it's hard to not think that when I'm like crying in front of friends or whatever, that they view me as weak. You know?
Even if you don't want to be surrounded by people where you feel like to put on a mask, you want to be surrounded by people where you can open up and like pause from life.
But it definitely in that like terms of feeling like strong, or like the pressure to feel strong, that's the only real time that for me as a man, I feel like the societal pressure to not be like that. It's sad because I love how I am, I love my emotions, I love how I express myself, but then like I sometimes catch myself feeling like, oh, I'm not as like attractive, or I'm not as a man because I'm sharing all those emotions.
And I think the first step is acknowledging this thought and just like, because our brains try to trick us the whole time, and it's just getting to the point where you not get tricked by your own brain.
In terms of like physically strong, like how do I feel the pressure to feel physically strong? I definitely do, especially being around like young guys who are all very wanting to be like muscly and like talk about it a lot. Growing up with body dysmorphia like I did, that's something that I've really struggled with. Anxiety would come out in how I looked, especially when I was younger, like 16 to 21. Like I would really hate how I looked. Like I had such a negative view of myself, view of like things I ate, like activities I do. Definitely came from being in a male environment. I still struggled like now with it. I don't really know how to solve it, because it's like, that's just like how guys are. Like guys want to be strong, they want to be like physically strong.
I think that's a great example to show that a problem doesn't define your gender.
No,
a problem is a neutral problem, and everyone can have it. It doesn't fucking matter if you're a woman or man or whatever you feel like. A problem is a problem, and we take it as it is and for what it is, and we try to fix it and deal with it. Even with like the comparing to others, by the end of the day you're not alone with this thought or with the problem. How did you felt telling the people around you that you go to therapy?
I think a lot of them knew it was coming. A lot of them knew that I needed help. It was COVID when I did it, and I was very open with telling my parents and my friends. But I was very scared to tell everyone, but not because I was worried about how they'd react.
Yeah.
It's more that I was scared of like them being worried for me, because like it's got such a big stigma around it that they would be like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Like I remember in the messages being like, "I'm fine. I just want to feel better."
Yeah.
So I think that was what I was scared about the most when I was talking about it, because I was like worried that they were going to feel worried for me.
Yeah.
My parents, I was very like relaxed about telling them. Like they were always very supportive of it, so I knew that they would be there to help me with it. And then as soon as I had it, I was so open. I wanted to like tell basically everyone, like, please go to therapy. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah. I preach that as well.
Yeah.
Like everyone should go to therapy.
I like, yeah, and that's why I'm so open about talking about it, because I'm like, therapy's the best.
Yeah,
like,
it really is.
Like,
yeah.
just go
have a chat.
Yeah. Especially with my friends that I had, like, nobody ever really talked about those things. So like me going to be like, oh, I'm gonna go and get therapy, like, was a big thing. And like they were all lovely about it. And like I've never had a bad reaction about telling someone I've gone to therapy. I think that's what people need to understand, is like there's never.
Yeah, no one will come up to you after you say, "Oh, I'm going to therapy." Not saying, "Oh, what the fuck?"
Yeah.
Or, there are obviously people who don't know how to react, but like.
Yeah. Even like since I started the mental health page, like I've never had one negative interaction from it at all.
Exactly.
Like I had a thing. It was like a few months ago at work. There's an older guy who works there, and he just came up to me and was like, "Oh, like I saw your like podcast, not the one that we did, like the one that I did before." He said I listened to it, and he was like, "Oh, it's like, it's really." He talked about like his generation never talked about it, and he's only getting to the point now where he wants to like talk about it. He said he was just like, it was really great to see someone talking about it, and like that honestly like hit me for six. I was like, I started just like crying as soon as he left, because I was like, that interaction is the whole reason I want to talk about things.
And that's like most of the time the reaction of people. Like as soon as you open up, they appreciate you opening up so much, and like they tell you that it is inspiring and that you motivated them to like do the same. Yeah. The people who come up to you saying something bad, fuck them. Like they have way bigger problems.
The thing is that when if somebody does that, like I just know that there's things going on in their life that are much worse.
Yeah. What was your reason by the end of like
why I went to therapy? I'd basically known that I needed to go to therapy, but then just put it off, and then COVID happened, and I was just in a real bad state of like how I thought about myself, my feelings. I wouldn't necessarily say suicidal, but I definitely was like verging on those thoughts, and I just had gotten to the point where I'd lived with my anxiety and my way of life for so long, and it was so draining. And I honestly think the turning point was the people around me that I loved. I wanted to get better for them. Yeah. So like my girlfriend at the time, my friends, my parents, like I didn't want them to worry about me. Yeah. Or like feel like they had to like stress about me. And I got to a point where I was just so like upset with how my life was, how like I lived my life, that I wanted to get help. And it shouldn't have got to that point. Like I should have gone earlier. But I definitely think everyone gets to that point where I could live my life, but it was such not a fulfilling life. Yeah. Like, my anxieties and my problems limited the way I lived my life, and I didn't want that anymore. So I went because I was like, I want to have a good life. I want to be happy. Yeah. I don't want to be controlled by these thoughts in my head.
And you did it.
And I did it.
Don't say that you wish you. Yeah. That was the time you were ready. Yeah. And you don't know what outcome it would have been if you went earlier.
I just think
you did it.
Part of like the part of like looking back on it is like, and I know I shouldn't, like I did it, I got better, but like I just felt bad for not putting through, but like having to be around me all the time would have been difficult when I wasn't feeling well. Yeah. So I think like it's sort of guilt that that people had to not put up with. I don't know how to say it.
But you felt more responsible for the other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the way
And they just had to like go through that with me. And I know they wanted to because they loved me, but
yeah.
Thank you for sharing this.
You're so great, Jacob, honestly. And you did the step, and I think that's the same what Nathan said. You are such an inspiring person. Yeah. And I think especially for men.
That feeling that I had, and the life that I live now, I'm so much happier. That's why I want to talk about it all the time. I want people to have that happiness. I want people to understand that they can live a better life. And like we had this friend who we met here. He was like in our friendship group at the start, quite quiet, really lovely guy.
Yeah. For me, like it took ages for me to like read him. Yeah. Because it was so hard.
Yeah. But like we incorporated him. It was like lovely. And like we just chat, and like he brought it up. He talked about it. It's like, oh, like I see you've got this like. I remember it like it was really early on. He was like, oh, I've seen you got this like mental health page. Like how can you? This is the first thing that I was like, oh. He said like, how do you feel like okay to like post about mental health, like? And I just explained to him like how I feel like, as I've said, like I want people to understand that like it shouldn't be a stigmatized thing that people should talk about, especially men, like I talk about with everyone. We had like 2 or 3 conversations like that at the start, like I would just have with anyone, you know. Yeah. And it was a good conversation. He was like, it was really appreciative. Anyway, we were friends then for months, and then he was leaving, and the day before he was leaving, he came up to me, and he said like, we were on the bus on the way home, and he was like, he'd always been really appreciative of me. He'd always said like, and like I was just like, I just took it as like a friendship, like oh whatever. But then he said to me, look, you saved my life, and it really like took me aback. I was like, what do you like? I didn't know what he meant. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. And he's like, no, like you really did. He said like he came out here with the intention of like ending his life, and that he said like the conversations he had with me, like, and my page like changed his perception on everything. And even though our problems were different, he felt seen. And that like he then went to go and get therapy while he was here, and he said he felt left feeling a lot better. But like that just like, it's just such an example of like, he said he never talked about his mental health with anyone, and I'm like, that was really sad to hear. But I think it's such a common thing with so many guys. Yeah. I think so many guys have never talked to anyone about their mental health. And like to think that those little, like, I didn't do anything in those conversations, really. We just had a conversation. Yeah. Like I would have with anyone. But like that little conversation, like he said, saved his life. And that's why I'm like, it doesn't take a lot for people to like have a change of perspective. Yeah. It really doesn't take a lot. So please just talk to someone about your mental health. Like, it doesn't have to be, I think part of the problem with talking about mental health is people that think you need to have these like big open conversations about how you feel, or like interventions or whatever. It literally just has to be a tiny conversation about mental health, and then it can literally save someone's life. Like,
well, you don't know how much impact you have on other people's life. Just like be open and be kind and be accepting. Yeah.
I told you we'd cry.
That's good.
I know.
How do you feel? Do you feel a bit lighter, or is it still a bit?
No, I feel lighter.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'm so proud of you, Jacob.
Thank you. I just honestly think it's like, it's so easy to say like, oh, guys just need to talk. Like, it's such a throwaway comment, I think. Like, oh, guys need to talk. And like, it's not very helpful to say to guys like, oh, you just need to talk about your mental health. Yeah. Like, that's obviously like so much harder than you think. Yeah. But it doesn't have to. It can just be little conversations, like tiny conversations that can have a big impact on people. And the more you have those conversations, the more it becomes like normalized, the more it becomes like less of a stigma, and the less people who end up like feeling lonely, like they don't. That's what like he felt like how I felt. He felt he was alone in how he felt about his problems. which I think is something that a lot of guys feel like. They feel alone in their problems. And all he needed was someone to be like, oh no, look, I've got similar problems. But yeah, even or just a hug or just being nice, kind to someone. It doesn't cost you anything. It has such a big impact on people's lives.
Even if you don't know how to express it or say it, you can write it down and give it to the closest person you know.
I've said the word anxiety a lot, and anxiety covers a lot of different branches. Like generalised anxiety, so it's like when you're out in public, you get general anxiety. But for me, what I deal with the most is health anxiety. I do think it's a lot more common than people think it is. And there's a comedian from Liverpool who did like a whole comedy hour on his health anxiety.
Okay,
and it's hilarious, and it makes light, and he talks about it seriously, but he makes light because it is quite a funny thing sometimes, as I'll explain. But yeah, there's a lot of people who talk about health anxiety, and it is quite common. So for me, like my definition of health anxiety is, I'll give an example. If I get a cold or the flu, I will have thoughts that this is going to kill me. Like I'm going to die from this.
Yeah.
And like my mind will race between, like Google would tell me what I would just,
Yeah.
But that's what my brain does automatically.
Okay.
I don't need Google to put those thoughts in my head.
Yeah,
they're already
just
there. Yeah. So that is very debilitating. So it's obviously like with illnesses, but it's also in general with like my health of like being out in the world. Like I'm scared of death. Like that's where the root of my health anxiety comes from.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to explain to people because you just sound a bit crazy. Like
I think nothing sounds crazy because it always lies in like the perception of the person.
Yeah.
More accepting.
Yeah. The way it works with health anxiety is your illogical brain kicks in.
Yeah.
And it feeds you all these thoughts.
Yeah.
How could that like affect your life? If I go around all the time having to stop thoughts of that I'm dying.
Yeah.
Or that like there's something wrong with me, it debilitates. Like, I'm so much better at it now, but like when I used to be ill, I used to just be like so down, like in my own head. I'd become irritated because my anxiety was playing up.
Yeah.
And like another example was I came back from traveling, I developed a cough, and then it got to the point where like I was coughing, and then I thought I was like choking when I was coughing, that like I couldn't get air in. And one night it got really bad. I like woke up, drank some water, and then was like thought I was choking on the water. Well, I was choking on the water. My brother had to like come out, took me to the hospital because like I thought I was choking.
Yeah.
We were there for ages, and like went to see the doctor, and the doctor was like, "Oh, do you have health anxiety?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "This is an anxiety induced like coughing fits."
Okay.
So basically, my anxiety was causing me to have these coughing fits where I thought I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
I didn't realise I was doing that, but because I was so anxious about this cough, it was making me like pretend to be choking on like nothing basically.
That's crazy because like that's actually the first time I hear about that.
Yeah.
Like I was never aware of health anxiety.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this is a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that like people have that.
Yeah. And like the reason why it comes out in health is because it's something you can't control. Like they told me a story of when I was 11 years old, I had like a really sore throat, and my mum said, "You came into my room like, oh, I think I'm gonna die." We went to the doctors the next day. It was tonsillitis, and my mum said like as soon as you were told what it was, you were like instantly better. My brain was like settled because it's like, oh, he's not dying.
That's what we both mean. How much impact your mindset and your thoughts have on everything, because normally your body tells you, that's how I experienced it, your body tells you what's wrong before your brain like realize it. But in terms of like anxiety, it's the other way around. If that's what I preach all the time, and we both like take care of your mindset and your brain. It's like your hand or your leg or whatever,
you need to
because
look after it.
you need to take care of your thoughts and your brain because it has such a big impact. And what I grew up with, my mum always preached us, think positive, even if you're sick. You're not angry, you're not annoyed, just like accept it and give yourself and your body time to heal. Because we have so many crazy self-healing.
Your mind can heal yourself. So while I was in therapy, I got ill. And we had techniques that I was using to help myself. The method she gave me was to sit there and like let the thoughts that were coming into my head, just hear them out. not try and think about them,
Yeah.
not try and push them away.
Yeah.
Just like, she was like, just let them like wash over you. That's what she said. Anyway, I remember like the first night I tried it, I sat there, let all of this like wash over me, all these thoughts, and like I woke up in the morning, I've never felt as better in my life.
Really?
I like still remember like the euphoric feeling, waking up feeling like, oh my god, I did it, like I overcame it.
Yeah.
Obviously it takes time, but like since then, it's crazy how less ill I've been, and how much quicker I get over illnesses, because as you said, like my mindset's so different now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know a lot of the reasons why I used to like continue being ill was because it was in my own head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, positive thinking and being like, oh no, it's fine, like I can get through it.
That's how meditation works.
Yeah.
To like sit there in like mindfulness and let the thoughts come to you, but like just let them passing by like clouds.
Yeah.
That's the thing with meditation, for example. You can't meditate after you meditated the first time.
Yeah.
Like it is an ongoing process, and you have to get to the state to actually meditate. It shouldn't like hold you back from like starting, because the more you do it, the better you will get. And meditation needs to be practiced.
Right.
And it's nice to like recognize how your brain tricks you and how your brain works.
I know
you
how
can
my
trick
brain.
your brain
I'm
back.
tricking. Literally now I'm like, come on. Like,
Honestly, don't.
Yeah.
That's great.
So like that was like, that's health anxiety. But then like, as I said, on top of that, it was like that fear of death.
Yeah.
That fear of like dying.
Why do you have the fear?
I always wondered why I had that, and like I don't know where it's come from. When I was a kid, something happened to me that shouldn't happen to any kid, and from that I had two like rules that I lived by. I had a rule that the world wasn't safe. Like, not that I like did this, it's just like, also I was like 6 years old, but like subconsciously I grew up with these thoughts that the world wasn't safe. And not to like trust people around me. So like I think it stems from that rule that I created. So it's not that I fear death, I just know that the world isn't safe. So then like I'm scared of being around stuff
in the world.
So that's why like going on holiday to a new place was really tough. Like I went on so many like holidays with my friends where we'd go and I'd come back early because I was anxious.
That's a big thing that you're here in Canada then.
Well, so like I had that for ages, and like I talked about it in therapy, came up with topics of like exposure, like especially for stuff like that, the world isn't safe, like I needed to expose myself to it. Like I remember I ruined like a holiday. I spent probably the entire week we were there just terrified. Like I didn't want to leave the room. That's not how I wanted to live my life. So anyway, like it took small steps, like doing things, exposing myself, like trying to be okay with it. And then obviously I went traveling. Like I was set off to go traveling for a year.
Most of the time that's the best therapy.
Yeah.
To like
Oh,
shock yourself.
Yeah, literally.
But you have to deal with it.
And I remember like the first night we got to like the hostel, and I remember like saying like, if I just last 2 weeks, I'm proud of myself. Like I'm out here.
Yeah.
It must have been about 4 or 5 weeks into the trip. I was feeling okay.
Yeah.
And then we went and volunteered in a jungle. That month we were there was the biggest exposure therapy to everything. There was strangler wasps, there was like tarantulas, scorpions, all these things that would trigger me to be like, I'm gonna die.
So let's pause that. Be fucking proud of that you put yourself in this surrounding.
But like I was there, so I couldn't do anything else. I just had to do it. It was an amazing place. And I was so privileged to be there, but at the same time, I was fucking shitting it because I was like, oh my God. We'll go back and do it again. But I remember leaving and being like, wow, I've exposed myself to so much. And then I remember like how I felt before we went in the jungle, before how I went afterwards. I was like, I'm just a different person. Like, I can face anything now.
Yeah. And I think that's like the strongest, when you like experience something and you are in the mindset of like, it doesn't fucking matter what happens now, I will get through it.
And that's so like my whole thing of like the world wasn't safe, I conquered all of it basically. Like there was no way before that trip or that I would have ever gone anywhere on my own. I talk about it on my page about like facing your fears. Because if you like live with the limitations that your brain sets you, you are then in an enclosed world. If I didn't put myself in a situation where I had to face my fears and challenges, I would never have expanded my view of the world. Like I would not be here right now. I would not have moved to Canada on my own if it wasn't for that experience, you know?
It's insane if you acknowledge how many levels your mindset expands as soon as you put yourself in a different situation. Care and take care about your mindset. We have, I think, around 30,000 thoughts per day.
Yeah.
So
I've probably got 60,000.
I'm actually not sure if it's 30,000, but like it is a lot. So choose wisely what you think, or like the way you think.
Yeah.
Because the more positive things you think, obviously you go so much lighter through the day, and the more negative thoughts you have, the more heavier the day will be.
Yeah. And what's the saying? It's you're the voice you listen to the most, or like the voice you hear the most is your own. And if it's negative, then all you're going to hear is a negative voice the most of the time.
Exactly.
So even if people are around you trying to help you and be nice, it won't make a difference because you're the only voice you can hear. Yeah. So as you said, like, and it sounds so easy, but I'll just be positive. And obviously there are times when you do need to be down and like experience your emotions. Yeah. But it's about like managing the majority of the time.
The picture I have in my mind is a garden, watering your thoughts, watering your mindset, doing things that are good for you, and the flowers will grow.
That's a very nice saying. Yeah. In terms of like clarity of thought, I remember before therapy, I used to view my head as just like a constant whirring of different things, like that I could never slow down. Mm-hmm. Whereas like now I've got such clarity on how I feel and how I think. That, as I said, that all comes from like practice, and these things take time. Yeah. Like I would have never been able to do that thing in the jungle, expose myself to all my biggest fears, if I hadn't have gone to therapy and had the tools to deal with like my mental health. Yeah. Going to therapy is a tool that you can then use to apply to the rest of your life. Therapy gave me the tools that then I could use if I wanted to then go into the jungle.
Yeah, it gives you so much freedom.
Yeah.
And like more control about your life and the way you want to live your life.
Yeah. That's a good question. Like social media is such a curse for guys. I was weaker before therapy than I am now.